This week's 5-minute video Bible study is dealing with depression. People in all walks of life, all ages, all races, seem to struggle with depression. And in a desperate attempt to cope with depression, Americans gulp down billions of antidepressants. The World Health Organization reports that by the year 2020, depression will be the second leading cause of disease in the world. How do we answer depression? Let's take a look at the definition of depression. Google Dictionary defines depression as severe despondency and dejection accompanied by feelings of hopelessness and inadequacy, a condition of mental disturbance typically with lack of energy and difficulty in maintaining concentration or interest in life. So it's important that we understand the difference between depression and discouragement. Depression seems to come maybe even when there's really no reason for it. Discouragement comes and the reason can be identified and dealt with. Did any of God's people struggle with depression? You better believe it. For example, Abraham experienced depression and the thought of not having a rightful heir. Jonah experienced depression when he found God would have mercy on his enemies. Elijah was asking for death when he was under extreme stress and fear for his life. King Saul felt depression when God's Spirit left him. Jeremiah, also known as the weeping prophet, was depressed at the thought of God turning his back on the entire nation. David sensed discouragement when he realized that he had hurt his friend, his nation, and God. Let's take a look at Elijah's experience with depression, because by observing and studying his life, we can find some hope and encouragement for our life too. 1 Kings chapter 19 verse 4 reads, "But he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness, and came and sat down under a juniper tree. And he requested for himself that he might die, and said, It is enough now, O Lord, take away my life, for I am not better than my fathers." You see, Elijah's problem was he was faced with situations outside of his control. And his experience was followed with sleepiness, not wanting to eat, not being on a regular schedule, and not feeling that he really had a purpose or a drive anymore for life. You see, the condition of the mind affects our health to a far greater degree than what many of us realize. Let's take a look at some of the physical results of depression. Heart attacks are much more common among depressed men. Calcium loss is seen even in young women when experiencing depression. In severe cases, brain functions become deranged and brain cells shrivel and die to the extent that key areas succumb to atrophy. But how did Elijah escape these feelings of hopelessness and depression? Let's take a look at 1 Kings chapter 19 for some answers. 1 Kings chapter 19 verse 5 says, "And as he lay and slept under a juniper tree, behold, then an angel touched him and said unto him, Arise and eat. And he looked, and behold, there was a cake baken on the coals, and a cruse of water at his head. And he did eat and drink, and laid him down again. And the angel of the Lord came again the second time, and touched him, and said, Arise and eat, because the journey is too great for you. And he arose, and did eat and drink, and went in strength of that meat 40 days and 40 nights unto Horeb, the mount of God." You see, not only did Elijah have to take a part in crawling out of this, but God played his part as well. Elijah needed to eat properly, he needed to drink properly, he needed some rest, and he needed to recognize that somebody understood the way he was feeling and why he was feeling it. He was strengthened enough to go for 40 days on what God had provided for him. And then when he was in the mountain, he wanted to seclude himself. He was staying inside a cave in darkness. Often this is the result. People want to withdraw, they want to be alone, and they want to be in darkness. But God sent a hurricane, he sent a forest fire, and he sent an earthquake to draw him out. But it wasn't God speaking through that. God was speaking through that still small voice, because God speaks to us peaceably. And he commissioned Elijah for work to do. And because of Elijah not giving up, recognizing that there was more than just him involved in his life, he anointed kings, he found a successor, and great things were done as a result of him because he didn't give up. God doesn't want you to give up. And we find wonderful advice for having a positive outlook in life in Philippians chapter 4. "Rejoice in the Lord always, and again I say rejoice. Be careful for nothing. Some translations say be anxious for nothing. But in everything, by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known unto God. Remember, God is in control. And before you consult anybody, consult Him. If you struggle with feelings of depression or discouragement, I'd encourage you to contact a pastor or a church leader that you can talk about these issues with. And if you've already done that, then you may need to contact a doctor and seek help that way. Thank you for taking the time for this 5-minute video Bible study dealing with depression. Next week we're going to take a look at healing childhood hurts. And if you've found this on YouTube, like us. If you found it on Facebook, like us. We want to be able to get this message out to the entire world because I believe there's a world hurting, and I believe the cure for a hurting world is found in the Word of God. Thank you for your time.